It's the Steve, Simmons and Buffery in advance of tomorrow night's Game 3 of the Eastern Conference quarterfinal playoff round between the Maple Leafs and the Boston Bruins. And Steve, for the first time in 9 years, a home game, a home playoff game at the Air Canada Centre.
Yeah, I think it's pretty historic. People are pumped. I'm seeing a lot of Leaf flags on cars out in the West End where I live, and I think it's great. I think it's doubly great because our other Major League team that's playing right now is so disappointing, the Toronto Blue Jays, that it gives the sports fan in this town something to cheer about.
You know, talking to some of the Leaf players today, what surprised them was the scene at Maple Leaf Square last night. They've already gotten footage of it. Clearly the PR staff or whoever wants them to be aware of the way fans are reacting to the Leaf win last night, and in particular to Phil Kessel's goal, which I think could be a turning point in this series.
Well, perhaps it's a turning point for Phil because, you know, he's a goal scorer and he tends to score in bunches, and he's had huge trouble against Boston. And maybe this sends him a message saying that, you know, I can perform against this team of the Boston, his former team. So maybe it's a turnaround for Kessel because he's had terrible stats against the Bruins since he's been traded to Toronto.
Well, that's the funny thing. Kessel's had terrible stats against the Bruins, but if you look at his playoff stats, he had 15 points in 15 games with the Bruins. He had 9 goals in 15 games in the playoffs, and now he has 1 in 2 games with the Leafs. And so he's been a proven playoff performer to date. James Van Riemsdyk, who made his reputation in the playoffs a couple years ago, scored a beautiful goal last night. And Joffrey Lupul, who's been a good playoff guy almost from the beginning of his career, 2 goals last night. I think he's the leader without the captaincy of this hockey team.
Oh, I agree. I think this, you know, once they get all their cylinders firing. Reimer, as you said, Steve's played really well. You get their D has been a bit scattered at times, I think, over the first 2 games. But once they get everything firing on all cylinders, I think if they can get Nazem Kadri playing his game and not making mistakes, I think this team has a chance of doing some big things here.
That's the fascinating thing for Coach Randy Carlyle, because he got through last night with Jake Gardiner in the lineup, with Nazem Kadri in the lineup, with young guys who still have to learn how to play the clock, how to play with a lead, not to make mistakes when it matters.
I think with Kadri, and you know, I thought he was better last night than he was the previous game. But again, you know, the curl and drag at 10 feet inside the blue line with a 3-1 lead, that doesn't sit very well with the coach, and he gets to know that, because that's what we're not about that. In that situation, that's uncalled for, and it's not scolding him. That's the reality of it. We just tell him. If you continue to do that, then you're not going to play.
I mean, it's a young team. I mean, there's very little playoff experience on this Leafs team compared to Boston, so I think they're finding their legs here a bit.
So I think if we're sitting in these seats tomorrow night, I think it's going to be so loud, you're going to barely be able to hear yourself think. For Steve Buffery, I'm Steve Simmons from the Air Canada Centre in Toronto.